Tonight, Washington is once again at a breaking point. At 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on January 31, 2026, half of the U.S. federal government ground to a halt. Federal offices closed. Programs were paused. Hundreds of thousands of workers were thrust into uncertainty, all because lawmakers in Congress failed to pass a full funding agreement in time. This isn't just political drama, it's a crisis that ripples across America and the world. From immigration policy to economic shockwaves, the reasons behind this shutdown go deeper than you might think. In today's video, we break this all down, clearly, comprehensively, and engagingly. First, what exactly is a government shutdown? The U.S. government doesn't automatically get funded every year. Congress must pass a series of 12 spending bills to authorize funding for agencies and departments before the start of the fiscal year, which begins on October 1st. If those bills aren't approved in time, parts of the government lose their authority to spend money. The result? A shutdown, where non-essential services stop, non-essential federal workers are furloughed, and essential workers often work without pay. This is not just a procedural glitch, it's a legal consequence of the Anti-Deficiency Act, a law that forbids the government from spending without appropriations. Now, let's zoom in on 2026. This year's shutdown didn't happen in isolation, it was the result of long-running political tension and a fresh flashpoint that ignited the political fuse. By January 2026, Congress had already passed 6 out of the 12 required funding bills needed for the 2026 fiscal year. The remaining bills were expected to be bundled and passed as a package in late January. But then something changed. In mid-January, local protests in Minneapolis escalated after 2 U.S. citizens, Alex Preddy and Renee Good, were killed during federal immigration enforcement operations, allegedly at the hands of agents from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. This sparked nationwide outrage and ignited fierce political debate. Democratic senators, led by their leadership, demanded that funding for the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, the department that oversees immigration and customs enforcement, ICE, as well as Border Patrol, be tied to new reforms on how these agencies operate. They wanted changes like body cameras on agents, bans on mask wearing during enforcement actions, and independent investigations into alleged misconduct. This was not a small tweak, it was a policy battle that went straight to the heart of one of the most divisive issues in American politics, immigration enforcement. Democrats refused to vote for full DHS funding unless these oversight reforms were included. And Republicans, who control the House, resisted tying funding to those conditions. In late January, Senate leaders from both parties reached what appeared to be a compromise. They would pass a spending package that funds most of the government through September and extend DHS funding for just 2 weeks, giving time to negotiate reforms. In a rare bipartisan move, the Senate approved this deal by a 71-29 vote on January 30, 2026. But here's where the drama intensified. The House of Representatives, which is currently out of session, did not vote on the Senate's compromise before funding expired at midnight on January 31. Speaker Mike Johnson said the chamber would not return for a vote until Monday, February 2, after the funding deadline. That delay, procedural as it may seem, was enough to trigger the shutdown. This is the intricate reality of Washington. A deal can be agreed in one chamber, but until both chambers approve it and it's signed by the president, funding technically lapses. Contrary to what many people imagine, this shutdown doesn't close the entire U.S. government, it's partial. Agencies that lacked funding when appropriations expired are affected, including State Treasury, Defense, certain civilian functions, Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, Health and Human Services, Labor, Education. And DHS, the core sticking point in this shutdown. Some agencies remain funded because their appropriations were already passed or funded through other mechanisms, including Interior, Justice, Commerce, Energy, Veterans Affairs, NASA and parts of the Environmental Protection Agency, and crucially, core essential functions still continue. Programs like Social Security and Medicare continue issuing payments, for example. But other services, like tax processing, visa and passport services, and federal research, may slow or stop. Shutdowns are more than bureaucratic inconveniences, they have real economic consequences. Economists estimate that even short shutdowns can shave roughly 0.1% to 0.2% off U.S. GDP growth for each week the government remains closed. That may sound small, but when you're talking about a $30 trillion economy, those ripples matter. Here's how shutdowns impact different sectors. Non-essential staff are furloughed, meaning they stay home without pay. Essential workers, like air traffic controllers and border patrol agents, continue to work but don't receive paychecks until funding returns. Federal contractors don't get back pay, even after funding resumes. So a prolonged shutdown can mean lost jobs and suspended projects, hitting local economies, especially in areas where federal employment is a big deal. Market jitters often follow funding gaps. Investors don't like uncertainty. While financial contagion is rare in short shutdowns, global markets do respond to Washington turmoil. So what does all this mean politically? A lot. This shutdown didn't revolve around tax rates or military spending. It was triggered, predominantly, by a debate over immigration enforcement accountability. That marks a shift in Washington's political battleground. Immigration policy is now intertwined with budget politics in unprecedented ways. Both Democrats and Republicans are fracturing internally. Some Republicans oppose any concessions on DHS at all, while some Democrats want even tougher reforms. This makes negotiation harder and deadlines more volatile. These shutdown standoffs happen against the backdrop of another election cycle. Public frustration, already high, can shape voter turnout, candidate messaging, and party narratives going into the 2026 midterms. This isn't just a U.S. domestic issue. The world pays attention when Washington's gears grind to a halt. Why? The U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. Economic uncertainty in the U.S. can jitter bond markets, influence global equities, and affect commodity prices worldwide. Shutdowns can hamper diplomatic efforts because foreign aid, security cooperation, and treaty negotiations require staff and funding decisions that are harder to make when Congress and the government are in crisis mode. The politics of immigration enforcement draw international attention, especially from groups concerned about human rights, cross-border movement, and regional policy coordination. The shutdown may be brief, possibly just over a weekend, if the House returns early and approves the Senate's compromise bill. If that happens, federal agencies could resume normal operations quickly. But the clock ticks relentlessly. If lawmakers don't resolve DHS funding and related reforms within the next 2 weeks, the shutdown could deepen or reignite into a larger funding crisis. At its core, this shutdown reflects a deeper political reality. Budget battles in the United States are no longer about spreadsheets. They're about identity, policy choices, and how some of the most sensitive issues, like immigration enforcement, are woven into the mechanics of governance. Whether this shutdown is short-lived or becomes a long-term story depends on whether policymakers can balance compromise with conviction, and whether they can deliver results without grinding the world's largest economy to a halt. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment below. Do you think this shutdown was inevitable, or could compromise have prevented it? Your thoughts might be featured in our next update.